Let's chat about how to recognize and cope with overwhelm, specifically the difference between stress overload and overwhelm. This has turned out to be a pretty meaty topic, so I've broken it into two parts. This part one episode is focusing on what everyday stress looks like when it turns into overwhelm for you and how you might react or respond in both the short and longer term. If you see value in this video, make sure to give me a thumbs up. It makes a huge difference. I've also created a simple chart you can download and use as a reference as you go through this episode or as a reminder for later. If you'd find that useful, click the 4F stress response link in the description below and I'll send it to you straight away. Then in the next part two episode, I'll talk more about what you can do to manage your stress and prevent you from always sliding into overwhelm. Plus, there's a cheeky little aside to poke the bear about why you might be heading there all too frequently. If you'd like to get updated when part two is released, simply click the subscribe button below. Okay, let's get started with this episode. I woke up this morning feeling okay, maybe a little tired from all the peopling I did over the last week, but overall I thought I was good to go until I sat down at my desk, and funnily enough, it was to write about stress and overwhelm. The irony. And then I began to get that uneasy feeling as as the thoughts of all the things that I had to get done rushed in and out and bounced around in my head about work, about the washing, about cooking and shopping, about the blog, the social media posts, the bookkeeping, the taxes, all the birthdays coming up. And my brain was pinging. When that happens, I can only describe it like the old pinball machines, you know, the ones that have the little silver ball and you work the paddles on the sides. And it's supposedly so that you can get that little ball to go where you want it to go. But more often than not, it goes all over the place and then down the chute to end the game without the high score hit. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you sweet young thing, I don't want to know. It'll just make me feel old. So save us both and just Google pinball machines. So anyway, as I was sitting there in front of my computer, I decided I needed to get on top of that uneasy stress feeling before it spiraled into something less manageable, like overwhelm. Does that ever happen to you? You get so many thoughts spinning around and it just feels like it's too much. You start to worry about all kinds of things that could go wrong or that did go wrong. You keep forgetting what to do or what you might forget to do. You stress about what you want to do, but you haven't got around to it yet. And as a fellow super giver, there's an additional layer of unease because this will impact the people who are depending on you. And you can't let them down. But your mind is all over the shop. And then you worry about that as well. I'm sure you'll recognize that everyday life can be stressful. There is always a lot going on. Usually, though, you can handle it. You know what actions to take. Logistically and emotionally, you know you can get through it, even with the looming deadlines and the effort it'll take to get it done, you know, what it'll require of you. Until you realize that you can't. This stress overload has progressed chronically, inch by inch, or exponentially into anxiety and overwhelm, and then you find yourself incapable of taking action. I wanted to share what to be on the lookout for in the hope that you can better recognize what can be a slippery slide from everyday stress of, you know, your tasks and activities into overwhelm. Brené Brown says, overwhelm means an extreme level of stress and emotional or cognitive intensity to the point of feeling unable to function. She goes on to say, the big difference is we can function in stress. We really can't function in overwhelm. I know I've said this before, but what we label things adds to how we feel about them and therefore how we deal with them. And it's so important to recognize if you are overloaded and stressed but still capable of functioning, or you have become overwhelmed and unable to function. Now, you also know I'll always take any opportunity I can to get my word geek on. So let's put overwhelm into the dictionary spotlight. Overwhelm is a verb, a doing word, meaning when a system is taking in more than it can process, manage, or release effectively. So think about this when we saw the flooding recently in Australia and New Zealand. There was just so much rain. It overwhelmed the rivers and the natural runoff systems. This can be the same for a work situation. So my son was telling me the other night, he took 110 phone calls, which is the equivalent of about 5 to 6 hours of work on the phone. And that was during his normal workday. This overwhelmed his system for carrying out his required admin and truck driving duties. At home, it can look like a gastro bug going around the family, overwhelming everything in its wake. I won't go into the details. I'm sure you will have all had that firsthand experience. Overwhelm can also be quite the chameleon, and it can sneak up on you unless you take some time to recognize what those disguises look like for you. Here are some indicators. You might be feeling anxious, worrying all the time, and your mind is racing, churning over and over about something. So ruminating without getting into action or getting any resolution. Physically, you might become fidgety, nerves on the outside of your body tingle. You might be distracted, feeling clumsy, moving around without any real sense of presence. So like bumping into things, and you might notice that there's a deficit in your fine motor skills. You can't quite pick things up as easily, or you miss the door handles or stub your fingers on shelves and drawers, not to mention your little toe on furniture. There might be an inability to concentrate, so you might have some memory impairment and a noticeable decline in your recall. Your brain just feels foggy. You might be tired, and depending on the depth and breadth of it, you might even struggle to get out of bed. For you, it might be that you become emotionally heightened through to outrightly dysregulated. Angry flare-ups, feeling frustrated, resentful, disappointed, fearful, shame, guilt, loneliness, feeling wronged, isolated, hopeless, and fragile. And all of these can be about others. It can be about yourself or your circumstances. It doesn't have to be specific, or it could be about all of that. And what I've noticed is that there is a snowball effect. Everything builds upon itself quickly, and it becomes increasingly more difficult to step out of those feelings. Instead, you're carried further away into the abyss, leaving you feeling powerless and at the effect of all that is happening around you. I'm also going to go out on a limb here and say that you have felt overwhelmed at some time in your life. So it's important to figure out, how do you get there? Because what puts me into overwhelm could be quite a different experience to your experience of what puts you into overwhelm. And, there are tons of reasons for this, like resilience thresholds are different. Our situations are different. Your resources are different to mine. Your support network is different to mine, just to name a few. But if I can get more generalized, it usually falls into a couple of categories. So there are increased inputs that overload your capacity to process or regulate. This might be a sudden overstimulation, like flooding, or a more chronic buildup that sneaks up on you. Do you remember the story about heating a frog? The frog doesn't know it's happening until it's too late to jump out. Shocking experiment, but I've never done it myself, read about it. But overwhelm is like that. You don't know it's happening until it's too late, unless you know what to look for. And as a super giver, there are added intensities because it's likely you feel and think deeply, like highly sensitive people, intuitives, and empaths. The other category is there is a decreased output or decreased outputs that retard your release capacity. This can be, getting caught up in the busyness of the days and the moments. And it's that busyness that isn't moving you toward your outcomes. It's doing the stuff that just uses up your precious resources. So the other thing is you might be holding on to old ways or not letting go of things that are no longer adding value to your life or the outcomes that are important to you. But as a super giver, you keep hanging on because you don't want to let anybody down because they're used to that. So what do you do when this happens? Whether it's increased inputs or decreased outputs. So it's really helpful for you to find a pattern or what resonates, perhaps in different circumstances or when different people are involved. And again, to take a broader view, it's about your stress responses, and these will usually fall inside the 4 Fs: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And they can look like this. Fight is the short-term survival tactic to fight back against a perpetrator or a threat. You might become irritable, angry, and project outwardly, display aggressive or self-protective behaviour. You might look to blame outside yourself and shift the responsibility or the accountability. You might seek to control or expect perfection and make use of some bullying tactics to that end. What we see is controlling, explosive, even narcissistic behaviour. When the fight response is used as a maladaptive or inflexible or uncompromising longer-term strategy, it manifests as a stress hormone-fueled tense body braced for reacting to everything as a threat. You're hypervigilant, irritable, and defensively, like constantly defensive, scanning for potential threats and stimuli that you can fight against. The next one is the flight response. Now, flight is the short-term survival tactic to flee from a perpetrator or a threat. You might become anxious, fearful, and have trouble slowing down. You might feel panic and run away or avoid interactions or participation with others or your inner self. You might worry and ruminate, looking for the elusive, perfect solution to validate your self-worth through overachievement. What we see is workaholism, overthinking, and perfectionism. When the flight response is used as a maladaptive, inflexible, or uncompromising longer-term strategy, it manifests as an inability to handle conflict, thereby avoiding uncomfortable relationships. You employ social isolation or escapism through excessive alcohol or substances, or disordered eating, reckless behaviour, or excessive activity. And then finally, we've got the freeze response. Freeze is the short-term survival tactic to freeze in the face of threat or further targeting by a predator. That, don't move, it won't see me. So becoming immobilized, stuck, and experiencing delays in reaction. You might collapse, space out, or hide, disassociating from taking any action. You might become depressed or even shamed by the futility of the circumstances or yourself. When this freeze response is used as a maladaptive longer-term strategy, it manifests as disassociation from present-day reality, which can include binging on TV, internet, food, or substances. You develop an emotional numbness that allows you to stay silent in conflict or to hide away to avoid being recognised or targeted by resentful or exploitive people. And then finally, fawn response. Fawn is the short-term survival tactic to pacify a caregiver or a person in power to get your basic needs met. You might become more susceptible to please others, to hold back or pretend to be unbothered. You might develop codependent relational patterns. You might experience difficulty setting and maintaining boundaries. When the fawn response is used as a maladaptive longer-term strategy, it manifests as chronic people-pleasing, lack of personal boundaries, and staying in dysfunctional or toxic relationships. You take on a caretaker role, creating a false version of yourself to appease others to avoid abandonment, or this false persona is used to soothe abusers and manipulators to avoid being harmed yourself. For me today, it looked like a blend of flight and freeze. I wanted to do anything else but sit at that computer, while also thinking about validating the requirement to collapse and just take a nap. I'm pleased to say that after all these years, I recognise my autopilot patterns and I can take the steering wheel back more readily. So my slides into overwhelm are infrequent, and if it does happen, I have the tools to manage it, which is what I'll be sharing with you in the next episode. I'll be covering the answers to these questions. What can you do when you're in the thick of it? Why do you keep going there? And what can you do to prevent it? In the meantime, I invite you to recall some moments where you have felt elevated stress and see if you can discern if it was stress overload or, in fact, overwhelm. Were you still able to function, or were you not able to function? And then work out whether it was due to increased inputs or decreased outputs that led you into that uncomfortable state. And then finally, how did you react or respond using the 4 Fs, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn that I just shared? Now, remember, it might look different for different scenarios. I've created a simple chart that you can download to use as a reference if you'd find that useful. So just click the 4 Fs stress response link in the description box below and I'll send it to you straight away. And I truly hope that you enjoyed this part 1 episode of Let's Chat about how to recognize and cope with overwhelm. Remember to click the subscribe button if you'd like to get updated when part 2 is released. I don't know when that is yet. If you'd like any help coping with stress, managing your own responses to the changes of your everyday tasks or activities, or maybe building up your resilience threshold, let me know. I have my Truly Deeply You program coming out really soon. This is where we get into all the good stuff. And if you'd like, if you get on my first in line list, you'll be the first to hear about it when it does. Because with all my heart, I want you to be able to use your voice, make your stand, and live your life your way with confidence and without guilt. Click the link in the notes to subscribe, and I will welcome you into my Super Giver community. See you next time.